songs, but before we do, why do we sing? Why do we sing songs as a church? There's not a lot of places you're going to find us, a group of people, singing songs. Oh, he knows because he raised his hand. There's not a lot of places you find a group of people singing songs. Maybe at a concert, or maybe around a birthday cake for somebody's birthday, and maybe sometimes even around a bonfire, which I think that's getting more and more rare. Well, let's talk about that. Why do we sing at church? Whether you're new or been here for a long time, why do we sing? Well, honestly, singing started as a tradition out of necessity. Thousands and thousands of years ago, people sang even to remember history. That's how they would pass on history, was through song, because it's easier to remember. And then the Jewish people, long before Christ came, the Jewish religion, they would write songs and sing songs as a way to remember the words that were written by prophets and things about God. But it's not so much of a necessity anymore with the Bible and with all the kinds of books and stuff that we have, but we still sing. And it's not just for tradition. But you see, we see that all as technology has grown, we've seen Christianity and Christians sing in church and together. Actually, King David, 2,000 years ago, the king of the Israelites, he wrote a whole book called Psalms in the Bible, and it's a bunch of songs that he wrote. We see Paul and Silas singing in prison by the Romans. They were in prison by the Romans. They were singing. We see Jesus singing after the Last Supper. So we see all throughout history this tradition of singing. We're actually told to sing. There's many verses in the Bible that say, sing to the Lord, rejoice with gladness. So we're told to sing. Okay? Some more reasons why we sing is to focus our hearts. That's why I think people sing along at concerts. It's because they're focusing in on what's happening with the band or the artist, and they're focused and they're in tune and they're connecting and they're singing on. They're focusing their hearts on what's happening. That's what we want to do. We want to focus our hearts on God and the things of God. We sing to remember the promises of God and who He is. A lot of all the songs we sing really are written about different aspects of God and who He is and what He said. And we take these concepts and we put them into a melody, and it's a way to remember the promises of God. We sing to glorify God. I think this is similar to what we do around a birthday cake. Why do we sing at somebody's birthday? Because we're glorifying that person. We're making them special. We're setting them apart on the birthday. It's your birthday. We're going to sing a song to you. I think that's what we're doing on Sunday morning every week. We're singing. We're glorifying God for who He is and making Him special and setting Him apart. And lastly, singing changes us. Maybe you've come to church, had a bad day, a bad week. Well, singing actually helps our hearts change from being hardened and angry to being soft and moldable and open to what God has to say. And I think just singing in general, being joyful, it changes our lives. So we're going to sing a couple songs. I invite you to stand and sing with us. If you're new to Venture or new to church in general, just feel free to participate however you feel comfortable. But we'd love to have you sing, whether that's on key or off key, or even the Bible talks about singing in your heart. That's another way that you can sing. This first song that we're going to sing, it's all about remembering the faithfulness of God and how He's faithful to us. Always has been, and He always will be. And so as we sing the song, let's remember that promise of God, that He will be faithful in our lives, that He will bring our lives to completion and always help us no matter what situations we find ourselves in. Singing might not be natural to you, but this month we're going to talk about singing and what it means and why we do it. I want to just encourage you to maybe try singing if you haven't really. It does not matter how good or bad your voice is, whether you follow the melodies or not. Any type of singing is pleasing to God. Even if it's not pleasing to your ear, it's pleasing to God. Lord, we pray that our singing and our worship to you is a pleasing sound to your ear, and I pray that we can focus our hearts and connect with you this morning, God. Help us to draw near to you, to grow closer to you. In your name we pray. Amen. Now we're going to have a quick 3-minute intermission. Kids can go out to Venture Kids. You can grab a snack, go to the bathroom, say hi to somebody. And then there'll be a couple videos, and then Brandon will be up to speak. Thanks, guys.
And generosity in supporting Boys and Girls Club of the Muskegon Lakeshore. Your great donation will actually support 12 weeks of snacks for about 50 of our elementary club members here temporarily located at All Shores Church here in Muskegon. Again, thank you so much for your support, and thank you for your collaboration and partnership.
You ever had like autocorrect kind of get you in trouble before? That's Chloe. She is the volunteer coordinator for the Boys and Girls Club, and we're excited about the partnership that we're building with them, and excited for what they're doing. And as we were going to drop off those snacks this week, I wrote her a quick email just to let her know we were on our way. And after I sent it, I reread it, and I was like, oh, this is not good. My email says, "Clown, we're headed your way." I'm like, oh boy. I had to apologize for her. I'm like, this is not the right way, especially since I hadn't met her. Chloe has an uncommon happiness to her, and I even said that to her. Her texts, her emails, her voice, everything about it just all sounds happy. And I'm like, how does the person get to be this kind of happy? But she was grateful for your generosity there, and we're actually excited they are in the process of getting back into their facility after this arson. Going into the summer, they're going to have all these stored shipping containers that they need to empty out and get into the building and clean up the building. And with our collaborating churches, we said, we're your people. So in May, June, there's going to be some different opportunities to serve and help out as they get downtown as well. Just to let you know about sort of this collaboration piece, this morning is actually Restore Church's 1-year birthday. So we're excited for them. Yeah, you guys can clap for that. So they're celebrating today, and we've been partnering with them along the way. Even to this day, Justin will tell me that the season that they served up here as they were in transition is just such a sweet season for their family, and they still know that they're loved and cared about here. The truth is, most churches don't make it to a year old. Just like a lot of small businesses fail in the first year, a lot of times churches start out and they don't make it here. So we're excited for them and the future of what's ahead. And we haven't even made it to our first birthday yet as a venture. And you say, oh, we're going to make it there. I'm like, I hope so. But the truth is, we need to be all in on it together. More people serving on teams here, more people in groups together, more people demonstrating generosity. We need to be in that all together as well. So for the next 3 weeks, we are in a collaborating series where we are talking about how to share your faith with others. And next week, you'll hear from Justin, and then after that, you'll hear from Matt Lewis. I'm actually speaking at Journey Church this morning as well. You're like, how are you doing that? It's power of technology. So pre-recorded message that they're sharing down at Journey this morning as well. But as we jump into this, the reality is in Matthew chapter 28, after Jesus had come back from the dead, he had resurrected, he showed himself to some friends, and he spent a few days before he ascended into the heavens, and he gave some instructions in Matthew chapter 28. And he said, go and make disciples, followers of Jesus. He said, baptize them, and then teach them to obey everything that I have taught you. And really, as we evaluate our effectiveness as a church, any church, say, what does it mean for us to actually be doing what Jesus gave us to do? It's, well, are we seeing more people follow Jesus? Are we seeing more people get baptized? And are we seeing people live out the ways of Jesus around us? And are we helping people do that? So we celebrate as people take the step of faith. We celebrate as people get baptized as this outward expression of an inner change. And we celebrate as we see people growing in obedience to the teachings of Jesus as well. But that's not just a church kind of mandate. Jesus gave that instructions to the first followers of Jesus, but it's both a collective thing for them and for us, but also it's something for all followers of Jesus to do personally as well. He wants us to be participating in what it means to make disciples, to see people baptized, and to follow everything that he's taught us. I just want to start this series with this question. As we talk about what it looks like to share our faith with others, who's the scariest person to share your faith with? Who would you be most nervous or apprehensive about to share what Jesus has done in your life? And I think if you start thinking through that question, you might initially think somebody that's very different from you, like maybe somebody that you just don't really like, or maybe somebody that comes from a different part of the world, or maybe someone that speaks a different language. You're like, I imagine that would be pretty challenging. Or maybe you're like, what if I met a celebrity and I had an opportunity to share? What would I do if it were a famous person? You might get kind of nerved up. Or what if it was a powerful person, a business leader or a politician or something like that? I think sometimes we think those are the people that would be hardest to share our faith with. But there's actually a right answer to this question. And that's that usually the hardest person to share our faith with is the person that we're closest with, the person that we live with, our friends, our neighbors, our co-workers, the people that we see and we interact with on a daily basis. Because those other people, whether they're famous or they're powerful or whatever that is, or different than us, usually they would be a stranger to us. And sometimes we can share a little bit more vulnerably, even with strangers. You're like, I'll never see that person again in my life. But when we think about the people that are closest to us, we wonder what will happen if we share our faith and they reject not just what we're sharing, but what if they reject us? How's that going to affect my life, my friendships, my relationships? What's going to change if I share it with the people closest to us? See, in the Bible, we see that the good news is good news for all people. And the truth is, the way that most people come to faith in Jesus is because someone shares that with them. There are other ways. Sometimes somebody could be out in the desert by themselves in the middle of nowhere and still come to faith in Jesus. Sometimes a movie or a book or something like that will lead people to Jesus. But most people throughout history come to faith because someone shares that. And even if we feel like a little hesitant or anxious or apprehensive about sharing our faith, the reality is that most people in our world are open to conversations about spirituality and faith. Despite what you might read on the internet or what you might see on TV, most people are actually curious and open to these conversations. So how do we share our faith even if it seems risky or scary or intimidating to us? You see, we've been in this series called The Way. We've been looking at the book of Acts and how God was working in the lives of those first followers of Jesus. But we're seeing it's not just stories of old, it's actually an invitation for us to participate in what God continues to do in the world around us. And one of the ways that we participate in what God continues to do is by sharing our faith with others. We don't need to be like harsh or awkward about the whole thing, but we do want to share our faith in a way that's real and honest, maybe about some of the struggles we face in our own lives, but also the hope that we found as well. We want our faith to be more than just clicking a like button or listening to Christian music if we're at work, or sharing a post on social media, or even just inviting somebody to church. How do we share what God is actually doing in our lives? And I think one of the big words about what makes that happen is the word courage. Maybe a courage that we can't even muster up on our own, but a courage that God gives us. I think a lot of us want to share our faith, but we might be afraid or nervous or anxious, feel like you don't have the right answers, you don't know the right things to say, you don't know how to start the conversation when it comes to your faith or anything like that. And more than anything, you don't want to be rejected by others. Years ago, was hanging out at a friend's house. I was 15 at the time. I had just finished my sophomore year of high school, and my buddy and I, we were spending a ton of time together all summer because we were commuting to work together. And I was hanging out at his house, and my dad calls me, and he goes, "Hey, I just bought you a plane ticket. You're headed to New York City next week." I'm like, "What?" What's going on? He had talked about this like months earlier to me, but I was kind of like, maybe if I just pretend it doesn't exist, maybe it will just go away. And instead, my dad just kind of took things into his own hands. And so he put me on a plane by myself to a city I had never been to hang out with people I had never met before. And the whole point of the week that I spent in New York City was hanging out with other students, trying to learn and grow in our faith and really learn how to share it with other people. Now, maybe the craziest part of this story is the fact that as a 15-year-old, one of my assignments for that week was a few different afternoons. We were supposed to go out into Central Park and strike up conversations with strangers and talk to them about Jesus. And you're like, what world did you grow up in? Is this like hundreds of years ago? Yeah, the world doesn't really work like that anymore. I can't imagine the same thing. But I will tell you that there were a couple things that really stood out to me about that week in New York. One is just the kindness and openness of the few strangers that I started conversations with. Maybe it was because I was young, or maybe they could tell I wasn't from New York, or whatever it was, but they just were kind to me. And I know for some of us, you're like just freaking out at the idea of starting conversations with strangers like that. But I think New Yorkers are maybe a little more open to this in the fact that there are so many people in New York that every single day New Yorkers are having extended conversations with people they will never see again. It's a daily occurrence to talk to strangers, where in a smaller town like we are, like a lot of times you know the people that you interact with on a daily basis. But in New York, things are just different. And I remember asking some questions and people sharing some of their thoughts on faith and things like that. But I also know that what struck me the most about that experience is what happened when they turned the conversation back on me. Said, so what do you believe? And I really didn't have much to say. I was just kind of quiet and maybe uncertain. And for me, I think I left that experience saying, I have to figure out if this is actually true, and if I actually believe it, and if it's actually going to impact my life. I want it to be true. But I realized that maybe I had been masquerading, or I had faking it when it came to being a Christian. I'd been trying to be a good kid rather than a changed kid, if you will. And one of the things I'm grateful for is that started something in my life that continues to this day. But one of the things when we talk about sharing the good news of Jesus is that we have to make a distinction between the message and the messenger. You think back thousands of years, there's been this phrase, don't kill the messenger. Like, why? What is that about? Well, back before email and before telephones and all this stuff, the way that sometimes leaders would send messages to other people in society or other countries or whatever that is they would send a messenger ahead of them, somebody that would move quickly. And that messenger might be delivering good news, bad news, whatever it is. But you imagine if somebody is a king or a military leader and they get bad news and they get furious about it, well, they want to take their anger out on somebody. And there's somebody right in front of them. And that this phrase goes back thousands of years. This idea that you say, hey, I'm just the messenger. Don't kill me. And I even think when it comes to sharing our faith, we might feel like that too. Like, I've got something to share with you, but don't kill me for sharing it. In the book of Acts, there's this message of hope beyond this life. Hope that we can be forgiven and reconciled to God because of what Jesus did. And there are all these messengers. And one of them is a man named Paul. Paul set out from Jerusalem on all these missionary journeys. He was just the messenger of this incredible message. And really, he took it to a lot of the known world at the time. But he traveled from town to town, city to city, any way he could to share this good news of Jesus. And he had ended up in this region called Macedonia, in this town called Philippi, which was it was kind of like a stepchild in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire loved Philippi, but it wasn't quite Roman enough for them, if you will, but it was an area of significant influence and economic prosperity and stuff like that. And there were a handful of Jewish people and converts to Judaism in the town of Philippi. Not enough that they had their own worship space or temple or anything like that, but they gathered together on a consistent basis to pray. And we see that Paul went to these people. It says this in Acts chapter 16, starting in verse 14. It says, one of those listening was a woman from the city of Thyatira named Lydia, a dealer in purple cloth. She was a worshiper of God, and the Lord opened her heart to respond to Paul's message. When she and the members of her household were baptized, she invited us to her home. If you consider me a believer in the Lord, she said, come and stay at my house. And she persuaded us. So here Paul goes to this group of Jewish people that had gotten together to pray. And one of them is a woman named Lydia. And it tells us that she's a dealer in purple. And you're like, I don't really know what that means. Purple was fabric that was very expensive, purchased by wealthy people and leaders and things like that. And what we probably can assume is because of her job, she's probably pretty affluent. Even if she's not affluent, she has friends in high places, if you want to say it that way. It might be like being the local Mercedes dealer. Like only certain kind of people come to you for business. And I think about when we think about sharing our faith, like who are some of the people that might make us anxious? Well, if somebody is affluent and maybe influential and somebody that's built a successful business, you might be nervous. Like, what happens if they reject me? Then they're going to tell all their friends, and all of a sudden I'll be shut out of town. And yet we see that Paul had the courage just to share the good news of Jesus. And what I love about this story is it says in there that the Lord opened her heart. The Lord opened her heart. One of the things when it comes to sharing our faith, we've got to trust is God is doing things above and beyond and before we can even understand them. And sometimes all he's doing is inviting us to share the good news with people that he's already changing. Paul didn't have to plead with her, or beg with her, or give her a whole lecture on why this is true, because God had already done the work. And we see her response is hospitality and inviting others to experience this as well. That when you take the courage to just be a messenger, you don't have to worry about the message so much, that God is the message. And we just get to share the message. It goes on in the next verse to share another account that Paul has right here. It says, once when we were going to the place of prayer, we were met by a female slave who had a spirit by which she predicted the future. She earned a great deal of money for her owners by fortune telling. She followed Paul and the rest of us, shouting, These are the servants of the Most High God who are telling you the way to be saved. She kept this up for so many days. And in part, you're like, isn't this a good thing? Like what she's doing. Finally, Paul became so annoyed that he turned around and he said to the spirit, in the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to come out of her. At that moment, the spirit left her. When her owners realized that their hope of making money was gone, they seized Paul and Silas and dragged them into the marketplace to face the authorities. They brought them before the magistrates and said, these men are Jews and throwing our city into an uproar by advocating customs unlawful for us Romans to accept or to practice. So he had just shared his faith with an affluent woman of influence, and now there's this slave girl with nothing to her name. She is a possession of people that were using her and this spirit that had overtaken her to their own advantage. Paul could have ignored her. He could have just said, you're not worth my time. And yet we see that he shared the good news of Jesus. And I don't know about you, but if I had the opportunity to get into a situation where it seemed like something supernatural was going on and probably scary, I'd probably be like, I'm out. And yet we see Paul had the courage to share the good news of Jesus, even in the face of demonic possession. The story goes on because this is going to cost him dearly. It says the crowd joined in the attack against Paul and Silas, and the magistrates ordered them to be stripped and beaten with rods. After they had been severely flogged, they were thrown into prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. When he received these orders, he put them in the inner cell and fastened their feet in the stocks. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. At once the prison doors flew open and everyone's chains came loose. The jailer woke up, and when he saw the prison doors open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself because he thought the prisoners had escaped. But Paul shouted, don't harm yourself. We are all here. The jailer called for the lights, rushed in, and fell trembling before Paul and Silas. He then brought them out and asked, sirs, what must I do to be saved? So here's one of Paul's enemies, the jailer that had arrested him. All of this is, I would say, quite unfair. All that they've been beaten, they've been arrested, they've been imprisoned for sharing the good news of Jesus. And think about the courage it takes to persevere in spite of that. And yet I don't think that's the most courageous part of the story at all. Because here's a man that's an enemy of Paul's, and the courage that he had to stay put when he realized that somebody's life is on the line. Because here's this jailer. He knows what the authorities will do to him if they find out that these prisoners had escaped. Not only is the same going to be happening to him, but he'll probably be publicly executed as well. So he comes up with the conclusion, well, I'm just going to take my own life. And yet Paul stayed. He stayed for that man, and he stayed so that he might experience the hope of Jesus in that moment as well. And so here's this incredible story where Paul Silas. They're singing like Aaron talked about in the inner part of this jail, and this supernatural event happens, and they're set free. And that they realize they're not set free for themselves, they're set free for this man's sake. I love his question. What must I do to be saved? If somebody asked you the same question, what would your answer be? What must I do to be saved? What do I do to begin a relationship with God? What do I do to respond to the good news of Jesus? This is what it says in the next verse. They replied, "Believe in the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, you and your household." Sometimes we make it a little too complicated. Well, if you sign up for this class, well, if you read these 3 books, if you watch these shows, if you come to church enough times, you can be saved. He just makes it really simple. What do you have to do to be saved? Believe in Jesus. Believe that he is who he said he is. Believe that he's done what he promised. And believe that you are loved just as you are, created forever for relationship with a loving and holy God. It goes on to say, then they spoke the word of the Lord to him and to all the others in his house. At that hour of the night, the jailer took them and washed their wounds. Then immediately he and all his household were baptized. The jailer brought them into his house and set a meal before them. He was filled with joy because he had come to believe in God, he and his whole household. The good news comes to this man, and it changes his life. It transforms everything about him, but it also results in his compassion towards them as he's bandaging them up and taking care of their wounds. He demonstrates hospitality as God is opening his heart to them, and they worship God through that. Matthew 28, I said, Jesus gave us this command. He said, go make disciples, followers of Jesus. What happens? This man and his family begin this relationship with Jesus. What does Jesus say next? Baptize them. They immediately get baptized in that moment. And then it says they shared the word of the Lord. In other words, they taught this family everything that Jesus had commanded. That's what it looks like. But what I love about this picture in Acts chapter 16 is Paul had the courage to share the good news of Jesus with anyone, anywhere. No matter your class, no matter whether you're on his team or not. What we see in the book of Acts is that the rich and the poor and the outcasts and the enemies and all of them are coming to Jesus because of the courage of these people willing to share the good news with anyone and everyone. The next summer after that trip to New York City, I had the opportunity to go back. Someone like, why would you do that? Sounded like it was crazy enough in the first place. I got the chance to go back and take some friends along with me. And honestly, it was a much different experience going there. One, I was over some of the nerves of going to New York City for the first time and stuff like that. But also, it had been a really exciting year of what God was doing in my life because he was showing me the truth of who he was in my own life. And we, again, went back out to Central Park, strike up these conversations. Like, how's this organization still in business? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know that it really is. Maybe things were different back then. But I remember a couple of conversations that I had that summer. One was with an older man from Jamaica that stood out to me. And one was with a young kid that was born and raised in New York City. And not long conversations, but spending some of the afternoon together. When I asked them if they wanted to begin a relationship with Jesus, they both said yes. And to me, I knew that had nothing to do with any fancy words that I said to them, just taking an interest in their life and sharing what Jesus was doing in my own life. And I was so amazed. I'm so grateful to God to be part of that experience. And what I saw is that sort of began like a snowball effect in my life. Because then I started sharing the good news of Jesus with some of my closest friends, the people that I was most nervous to share with, because what if they rejected me? What would that mean to my life, my friendships, and all of that stuff? I remember I was supposed to go to a church activity, but a group of my friends had gotten together, and I just felt like I was supposed to stay, even though I was supposed to be at church in a few minutes, and begin this conversation with my friend. And so I stayed, and I didn't want to disappoint people at church, but also I was so nervous. But I walked back into my friend's house, and he was hanging out in the basement. I said, hey, can I just talk to you? I just asked him some questions about his life and what he thought mattered most and what he was building his future on. And it was the most incredible conversation in my life to that point. Because what came from that a few weeks later is he walked into school one winter morning, and he just looked at me and said, I did it. That's all he said. I knew exactly what he meant. Because he had been wrestling with whether Jesus was true or not, whether Jesus was real or not. And I knew when he said those words that he had come to believe in Jesus just like this jailer. And everything was going to be different for him. And it became more of my friends, and it became some of their friends and some of their family. It became like this snowball effect where there's a whole posse of people. Because God was at work in the middle of all of this, and I was maybe foolish enough, or I worked up a little bit of courage in the moment to begin this conversation. It's changed so many people's lives, and it continues to this day. I'm so grateful for that. What we see is that Paul would share with anyone, anywhere. And one of the ways we build the courage to share with the people closest to us is maybe to share with a stranger. Go to a park, strike up a conversation. When you're at the airport, talk to somebody. Ask them what is most important to them in life. Try to have a conversation with somebody you'll never have to worry about seeing again. If they reject you, well, life moves on. But then we can maybe begin conversations with people closer to us as well. Maybe friends or acquaintances or coworkers, people that you see on a daily basis. And maybe eventually you end up with the people that are closest to you, the ones that you love the most. It doesn't have to be complicated. Conversations like, what are you building your life on? What do you believe matters most? What do you think is beyond this life? One conversation can lead to many conversations. One conversation with a stranger can lead to conversations with those closer to you. And over time, you might find that you've developed the courage just to make this a habit, a way of life, of sharing the good news of Jesus with others. It just takes one step of courage. Again, you don't have to worry about them killing the messenger. Most people are open to these conversations, and you don't have to be the message. We're just invited to be messengers in our own lives, trusting that God is already at work. He's already doing things that we can't see, and then he might change people's lives one story at a time. Would you pray with me? God, we thank you that you are a God that is at work in others' lives above and beyond and before we can even perceive it. God, you invite us to participate in what you're doing in this world, and one of the ways is to share the good news of Jesus, what he's done in our lives, what we see him doing in others, and that we might be the messenger of this good news that can change everybody's life, where they find themselves accepted and loved and invited in to this family of God through the power and the presence of Jesus. God, it's because of what he's done that we have this hope. And it's for him that we'll share the good news with the whole world, God. And we love you. We give you thanks. Amen.
Yeah, I invite you to stand with us and sing along with us.